Thank you for joining today's webinar, Securing Perimeters, Your Options. My name is Jeff Rushton and I'm the Chief Technical Officer here at Alarm Corp. If you haven't joined us for a webinar before, I'll just run through a little bit of housekeeping first. For the duration of the webinar, you'll be muted, which you are now. And just to ensure that you can both see my presentation and hear me, if you wouldn't mind clicking on the hand icon, just so I can make sure that everything's working. Okay, beautiful. If you could just re-click those and we'll be on our way. If at any time during the webinar you'd like to ask a question, feel free to. The best way to do it, in fact the only way to do it, is to type your question in the question pane and then hit the send button. And at the end of the webinar I'll run through any questions that have come up and hopefully attempt to answer them for you. Okay, just before we get started, we'll talk about the agenda. For perimeter protection, basically, in order to generate an actionable alarm, outdoors in particular is what we're looking at, the following groups of products pretty much can be considered. There probably are some other ones, but ultimately these are the main types. We've got PE beams, outdoor movement detectors, buried detection systems, microphonic or fiber systems, seismic and vibration products, and for CCTV we've got the trusty old video motion detection or analytics. And we'll briefly have a look at some other products such as electric fence and taut wire. Before we start with those, we probably need to consider a couple of points, and I suppose the majority of this presentation is based around these key areas. Firstly, but not the most important, would be price. When I did the research for this, the products that we're talking about vary from a few $100s up into tens of thousands of dollars, and it would be a good idea for you to at least see the variance in price for certain types of technology. So as a guide for the slides that come up, anything with a dollar symbol is in the low hundreds of dollars. Anything with a couple of dollar symbols is in the low thousands of dollars. $3 symbols, you're talking a number of thousands of dollars. 4, $10,000 or thereabouts, and 5, potentially many tens of thousands of dollars for the product. Also, reliability to me is probably, this an application, probably the most important, is with a lot of products you can get away with new whiz-bang technology, but when it comes to perimeter products, I think anything less than I would class as best in class, that is something that has got a very strong proven performance and has been around and has loads of reference sites, I would probably want to avoid. Coming from a technical background, and I suppose even if I was a customer, a consultant or an integrator, reliability has to be one of the absolute key requirements for a perimeter system. Certainly we're going to be discussing where and when or what not to install with the various technologies in various applications. And certainly things like installation are important. How easy it is to install, how easy it is to wire, how easy is it to maintain, are all key points. And then a little bit of a disclaimer down the bottom. The more expensive is not always the best solution, and sometimes the more expensive is by far the best solution. In other words, just because it's dearer doesn't necessarily mean it's the best, but in saying that, sometimes the best solution happens to be the most expensive product. So let's start with PE beams. So you can see, and this will be the guide, regarding the remainder of our slides. There's a dollar symbol there next to a single PE beam, and 3 next to a stacked PE beam arrangement. All these PE beams ultimately operate the same way. They're all line of sight. The products that we're discussing all require a transmitter and a receiver. They can be stacked on top of each other to accommodate a higher level of coverage, and in all cases, breaking the detection beam activates the alarm. Some considerations though. Both the transmitter and receiver require both cabling and power. They all operate in line of sight, so the line of sight must be clear. All these detectors can be either freestanding or building mounted or pole mounted. The single units do offer only a limited degree of protection and hence coverage, but certainly there is a large variety of beams around, and there's various models that will cover you from 50 metres to about 200 metres outdoors. And one of the other key considerations is that the ground between the beams has to be level. Otherwise, dead spots will exist. Some of the advantage of a PE beam is that certainly the single units are very cheap to purchase, and they can cover a large area, so as we've set up to about 200 metres. The stacked units, they can provide a virtual wall, and obviously you can't see that virtual wall, and it's virtually impossible to scale as well. Some of the better PE beam systems will operate on multiple frequencies, and they can be coded to a particular transmitter. So it makes the beam set more reliable in operation, and less prone from interference from other beam sets adjacent to them. And some of the stacked beam sets, they can also accommodate maybe a microwave detector or an inbuilt camera. So in the case of the one here on the right hand side, sometimes a microwave detector is put here in the middle, or potentially a camera that's looking down the path of the beam to capture any, to what caused the alarm to go off. Certainly some of the disadvantages of a PE beam is that they require alignment, and I've never seen a PE beam align easily. So it's very time consuming. Obviously the more beams you've got, the longer time you need to allow, and typically in time they'll need to be realigned to ensure that they're operating correctly. The most obvious point as a disadvantage is anything placed in the path of the beam renders that beam useless. So if you've got a beam set looking down a car park, and a car park's in the space of the beam, that entire zone length now is null and void until that object is moved. I've got here single beams are rarely effective, and they're certainly easy to overcome. A single beam sort of mounted at any height, it's relatively easy to scale over the top of it or go under the beam path without detection. And as we'll see a little bit later on one of the slides, and we've sort of discussed in any case, things like changes in terrain or the level of the terrain between the transmitter and receiver is very important. If it's not flat, you're going to have holes in your detection which someone could take advantage of. And certainly things like snow, fog, sunlight, and rain can all affect the range and sensitivity, and sometimes to a point where an alarm can't be generated anymore. On some of the more expensive beam sets, there will be an output that you can use that will, advise when that beam set can no longer detect. But that sort of, it's great to be informed, but you don't have any protection or coverage on that zone while this fog or rain exists. So that can certainly be a major obstacle. Where would I use a single beam? Well, because they're inexpensive, so wherever a cost-effective, non-critical outdoor requirement is, and they're good certainly with other forms of outdoor detection, like we'll talk about next, like movement sensors or cameras. So in a residential environment or a low-risk commercial environment, they're fine. With the multi-stack coated beam sets, though, they're considerably more expensive. They could be between 20 to 40 times dearer than a single beam. But they're used where detection is a little bit more paramount. One of the key advantages is that they are difficult to defeat, and they do offer an invisible full barrier. It's a little bit like the picture there on the right. That's about 3 meters high. There's no way that you're going to get over it or through it without generating an alarm from left to right or even right to left. Typically, though, because of the expense, they're more used in higher security environments, certainly places like prisons, or high-risk commercial sites where you really do want to have a good detection on the perimeter. Some of these, both with the single and the multi-stacked units, some are also SCEC approved. Alarm Corp sell both the Siemens and the Interlogix PE beams, and we also have the beam stacks from a company called Securit. With outdoor movement detectors, there's generally two types, the trusty old PIR and microwave. The PIR operates just like every other PIR, but it detects a change in infrared energy in its surroundings, but when included with additional smarts like filters and software algorithms, it makes the detectors quite stable outdoors. Microwaves, on the other hand, work on a thing called the Doppler effect, and they actually send out a frequency and then expect to have that same frequency come back. And if there's any changes in that, they're processed and then detected. The main difference, and there's a few, but the main difference between the two types of technologies is that a PIR or a passive infrared detector is exactly that. It's passive. It generates no interference, and many units can operate together without any problems. Whereas with a microwave, they're active. They're sending out a frequency all of the time, and they can affect other electronic products, not just security products, and they can certainly affect other microwaves nearby. So it's important that each microwave set has a different frequency to the other units surrounding it. Things to consider, though, with these units is that PIRs only require mounting in one location. So they're all enclosed in the one box, and they can go out to, in our case, up to about 150 meters. So mounted in one spot, wired in one spot, and detection out for a considerable amount. You'll see on the next slide that PIRs will typically need to be looking at the ground at their maximum range, and I'll explain that on the next slide. For small distances, microwaves can come in a single unit, but for the larger distance units, let's say from 100 meters up, they operate in the same way as a PE beam does, that it has a transmitter and a receiver. Coverage on these detectors can range from a simple 20-metre wide-angle detector up until about a 200-metre curtain detection coverage. You can see that the picture on the top right has a PIR located about 4 metres up a pole, and the range is extending a little bit beyond 100 metres in this particular case. You'll notice that the detector is looking towards the ground at its maximum range, and there's two real key reasons why that's required. One is the fact that a PIR looks at a change in infrared energy. It really does need to have a background source to compare it with. So in this case, the PIR is using the ground as its reference. The other reason, a more obvious reason, is this detector can go considerably longer than 100 metres, so the best way to stop it at 100 or 110 or 80 metres or whatever your range requirements are, you need to angle it down in order to ensure that you don't have detection beyond the distance that you require. As we've said, PIRs can be wall or pole mounted, or happily installed on a camera pole if they exist. They're highly sensitive and they're very configurable. And some of the models have directional alarm facilities, which means that we can detect left-right or right-left across the face of the detector. So in the case of the bottom right drawing, we could have it so it only goes into an alarm when somebody crosses the fence at the top and then heads towards the bottom of the screen. Whereas if you moved up the screen, in this case, that an alarm wouldn't be generated. And all these technologies have a very high degree of false alarm immunity. Some disadvantages though, and this first point actually really does apply to everything we're discussing today, that all of these types of technologies really do require you to have a secure perimeter. Secure in terms of a fence or the ability to stop, so I've got here stray people and animals, because a stray person or an animal will cause an alarm on everything that we're going to discuss here today. Vegetation is also an important issue. So things like tree branches and plants that are blowing in the breeze have to be avoided. So again, in the case of the bottom right picture, you don't want to have any of these bushes within the detection range. And for microwaves, just like PE beams, the ground level is critical, which I'll show you now. So we can see on the top picture the transmitter and receiver of a microwave. On flat ground, great. You get a small dead spot at each end, which is normal. Whenever you have uneven ground, you create lots of problems. So in the case of that right-hand picture, there's more holes there than Swiss cheese at the moment. So there's plenty of places that you can cross that beam without being detected. And as we said, vegetation and trees are things to avoid. With microwaves, with PIRs and with PE beams, is certainly the bottom picture, is avoid vegetation at all costs. Where would I use a PIR detector? Certainly I would say in a high-end residential, or in fact any commercial or government situation. They're perfect anywhere, but they're certainly great when they're used in parallel to a fence line and you have a curtain detector. It creates a full curtain that is very effective. So certainly again, high-end residential, commercial, government, electricity substations, fence lines, sterile areas, and some of these detectors are SCEC approved also. For microwaves, microwaves are typically a little larger, in fact some are a lot larger, and they're more expensive. So you won't find too many microwave detectors on a commercial site. The vast majority would be in places like prisons and the military, and also some of those products are SCEC approved. Alarm Corp sells the Extralis range of AdPro PIRs, and there's quite a variety there for most applications. A technology that isn't as common, but felt I really needed to include it here, is buried detection. And the way that this works is there's a transmitter and a receiver leaky feeder cable, which is placed in the ground at about 2 meters apart in the case of this particular product. The signal is fed into an analyzer and it's processed. The same system we could also use on a wall. So that bottom right picture shows those 2 cables located on a wall to give coverage, from crossing or climbing over that wall. Things to consider though. We can probably tell by before we look at that we tell by the amount of dollar signs that I've got, it's not the cheapest product on the block. When you're using buried detection though, the composition of the ground is absolutely paramount. Things like mud, rock, and water flow in particular, can cause problems, or certainly can change the characteristics of detection for these products. So things like earthworks and underground cabling, typically fall outside the expertise of the average security installer, so it's best to get someone who specialises in groundworks to dig and then backfill the holes for a product like this. Zone lengths can be as short as 10 meters or up to 150 meters in length, and they're about 3 meters wide at their widest point. Certainly the advantage of this system is it's totally covert. Can't see it, it's hidden, you don't know where the detection area is, you don't know where it starts, you don't know where it stops. So it really is ideal for high-profile residences with large blocks. And this product isn't affected by normal environmental conditions, so sun, wind, all of that sort of stuff. Certainly the disadvantages though with this product is the amount of ground preparation that's required. It can't be installed in the ground next to ferrous material and can't be installed within about 5 meters of a roadway or moving traffic. It can be difficult to fault find after installation because most of it's, or nearly all of it's, underground. And although I've said normal environmental conditions aren't a factor, things like extremely heavy rain can be if drainage hasn't been considered. So water flow, if water flow is next to these leaky cables, it will definitely cause issues with this product. So water flow needs to be away from this installation. Based on all of that, I suppose, where could we use a product of this type? There's probably more applications, but I've come up with, and where we've used them previously, is where covert detection is critical. In other words, you want to hide the product, and cost is not a consideration. You obviously need a large open grassed area around whatever it is that you want to protect. So that sort of limits it down to high-end residential. So popular people, I don't know, pop stars, movie stars, all those sorts of guys, political people, and obviously you need to be wealthy. Or potentially buildings of historical significance. That is, in an area that you really need to have security, but you don't want it to be obvious. So for us, we sell the GeoCrypt Rapid system, and in fact that's actually the product that's been showed in these slides. Works very well as long as you take all of those things into consideration. If any of those things are a problem, I would avoid buried detection and pick something else, like one of these other types of technology. So that leads us on to microphonic or fiber cable detection systems. So in the case of a microphonic cable, it employs a special cable that's sensitive to very small vibrations. It's connected to a processor, and it can detect people climbing over a fence or cutting it. A fiber system uses the deflection and the diffraction of light through a fiber optic cable to accomplish much the same result. Most microphonic cable systems that you see only work on certain types of fence, so it's important to find out whether it works on the fence type in particular that you're looking at. Alarm Corp though uses GeoEquip, and that's been tested on all fence types. It will work quite happily on any type of fence that you have. And I've listed here the only other real consideration is, other than what we would call the standard cable handling techniques, nothing else really needs to be worried about. In other words, with this type of cable, much the same as fiber, you shouldn't step on it, shouldn't drive over it, shouldn't stretch it, shouldn't make the radius too great. As long as you follow those basic installation guidelines, there is nothing really else to consider when installing this product on a fence. Certainly the absolute key advantage of a microphonic cable system that's been around a while is that they are extremely reliable. So I've got microphonic in particular, well, GeoEquip in particular has been around for far in excess of 20 years. And although it has changed in that time, hasn't changed significantly. It's still as reliable today as it was back then. Very easy to install, very easy to set up, and very easy to fault find. Disadvantages, there probably are some, but I couldn't think of any at the time. Basically, it's a worry-free installation after it's put in. So we can have a look here on this slide at some of the fence types. So weld mesh is quite popular. All we do is cable tie the cable to your weld mesh fence. If it's going on a brick wall or a concrete wall, typically you would mount the cable in conduit, so in PVC conduit, and run that along the wall. That is good then for detecting, a ram raid or a sledgehammer. It won't detect you climbing over the brick wall in this case. This would be more likely a wall to a factory or to a store or something of that nature. With chain link fence, you just run the cable along the fence and cable tie it also. With palisade fence, most microphonic systems don't operate on this type of fence. With the GeoEquip, if there's a channel, you can just sit the cable in the channel along a palisade fence. If there isn't a channel, like there isn't on this drawing, it can be installed in a very small duct, which is then pushed on to the angle of the palisade for detection, and works extremely well. Where would I use a microphonic cable system? Pretty much wherever there is a fence or a wall, microphonic is a good solution. So wherever someone's going to climb over something, cut through something, or attempt to knock it down, a microphonic cable system will work. Hence, pretty much any commercial, government, or high security application, like a car yard or a large perimeter like an airport, a prison, and the product is SCEC approved, or our product is SCEC approved. In the case of fiber is a little bit more expensive. So it's really only cost effective on a long perimeter. And a long perimeter, I would say anything probably over about 2 kilometers in length, fiber becomes quite cost effective. So if it's a state or a country border, or a long pipeline, something that is where someone says a couple of kilometers or longer, fiber could be a very good alternative. Alarm Corp sell all of the products from GeoEquip, which is the guard wire, the defensor, and the impactor product. Next on our list is seismic and vibration detection. All the seismic and vibration detectors, they work on some type of sensor, and typically that sensor is securely mounted to the surface that it's being protected, and then it's analysed and a response is then generated. With the Siemens seismic detectors, they use a patented biomorph sensor to detect minute vibrations within a frequency of 16 Hertz. When you're using a seismic or a vibration detector, things to consider would be that these types of products, you need to ensure that they work on vibration, so they need to be kept away from sources of vibration. And really the only things that fall into this category are heavy machinery that might be in an adjacent building or the same building, or traffic, stop-start traffic. So right adjacent to a road potentially could be an issue. Fixing is very important as well, as these products only work when they're installed on a strong surface. So something like brick or steel, concrete, glass. They don't work overly well on things like plaster or wood. Advantages though, seismic detectors are extremely reliable. They are extremely easy to install, and setup is very straightforward, as well as they use almost no power. There are very few disadvantages other than, let's say, the considerations that we saw on the previous slide. There is another product as well. This little orange looking thing with teeth is a GeoQuip product as well, and that can be installed on a picture like on the right hand side there, where you've got a concrete and metal wall in this case. That can be embedded into the base of the concrete at certain intervals along that wall and detect people coming up and attempting to climb over it. Uses for seismics. As I've said, pretty much any solid construction where gross attack is a possibility. So safes, ATMs, vaults, warehouse walls, ammunition stores, vending machines, ticket machines, pretty much any financial or high security application, and our product is SCEC approved also. With vibration detectors, they're quite inexpensive, and they're very good cost-effective protection for glass breakage on windows and doors. So great for residential or commercial applications. And the product that one of the products that we sell is called an ES400. It also is SCEC approved. So we sell the GM730 and the ES400 in these products. CCTV is becoming, I suppose, a larger area in the perimeter protection market. I've got here that pretty much all VMD CCTV systems, they work on a change in pixel on the camera, and they detect it and then process that accordingly. With analytic systems, they can work in a variety of ways, but generally they can be programmed to include things like a tripwire detection or a directional alarm, or things like object left detection. So different manufacturers do it in different ways, but ultimately, the same sort of programming can be accomplished with most of them. Things to consider though with any CCTV related analytics or VMD. An important consideration is your camera selection and the location that you put the camera. Factors such as, in fact, any environmental condition, but factors such as light, shadows, wind, clouds, contrast, all play a role in generating false alarms on these systems. I'll put in a little disclaimer because it annoys me sometimes down here, is I'll put in the fact that these false alarms typically are being recorded and can be played back so you can see what the cause of the alarm or the false alarm is. That's not a reason to put in a system that's going to generate false alarms. You really want it to be able to stand on its own and be as false alarm free as possible. So the next point to me is very important. I've got here programming of the system. It can be done a variety of ways, but I've got here it needs to be intelligent to ensure a reliable system. And that is, if you've got the ability to generate a tripwire or pixel protection or the speed or the size of an area, you would program as many things as possible to ensure that the only thing that generates an alarm is what you want to generate an alarm, and all of those unwanted alarms are ignored and not seen as potential false alarms. So the programming of these systems is just as important as the system you select. I've got here a short video that may or may not come out very well on your screen depending on the speed of your internet connection. But it's basically showing a camera that's been set up to have a tripwire, which is the orange across the top, which is going along a fence line, and there's two little orange blobs which are two people. One person has climbed over the fence and is now on the right hand side of that orange line and then moving up. So it's just showing you that how a simple tripwire can be used to activate or to generate an alarm. That sort of thing typically is done on a larger VMS system that has analytic capability. But there's more and more cameras these days that are coming with sometimes simple or sometimes a little bit more advanced analytics built into the camera. The camera shown was a Sony camera, and there's a number of cameras within the range that actually include those sort of analytics built within the camera itself. What are some of the advantages of using a CCTV system in lieu of other types of technologies? Well, I suppose that most sites that require this already have or are installing CCTV. So it sort of makes a very logical choice to add analytics without adding extra perimeter hardware and labor and installation. And one of the absolute beauties is programming and fine-tuning of the system can be done back in your office or in the control room or the site office. It doesn't necessarily have to be done out in the field on site. There's going to be reduced cost and installation because of using analytics. Analytics typically work well with pretty much all cameras and all types, whether they're day-night, infrared, or thermal cameras. But key disadvantages are, for a sensitive or a high security site, this type of detection is never or very rarely used by itself. It really is always used with some other type of technology that we're discussing here today. Most are prone to excessive false alarms. And another key consideration is if you lose a camera, you lose a video, the camera goes down, not only have you lost your visual image and recording of that zone, you've now lost your alarm reporting on that zone as well. So in terms of failure, it doesn't make for a very reliable system. And in my opinion, regardless of what type of camera you use, nighttime situations always will cause you issues, even if you're using thermal cameras. Nighttime coverage has different issues to the day, and sensitivity and range can cause you problems with detection as well. So with VMD, the standard VMD that pretty much comes with any DVR on the market today, the customer can have for no additional cost. He can get an alarm generated from a camera when something moves in front of it. In my opinion, this is good for activating a door chime in a shop, for maybe bringing up an image full screen on a monitor when there is movement in a particular area, or simply maybe to record at a higher rate. Those features of VMD are good for those things. So it's great for residential, maybe small commercial. I would never use it to generate an alarm for an alarm system after hours. It just won't work reliably. With analytics though, this is becoming much more common, especially in places, and I talk about this real-time monitoring, when there's someone watching a monitor. So in a guard house, guard room, somewhere where there's someone watching the screen. Certainly can be used for perimeter applications, but it's actually being more and more used for internal applications to determine if you're in a room, going through a door, going down a hallway, that sort of thing, because there's less, it's much more controlled, there's less environmental considerations to take, so therefore it's much more reliable when used indoors. Certainly though, if you're a larger commercial site with a guard, or a prison or some other high security site, then these sort of analytics, when used with other forms of detection, are extremely good. Alarm Corp distribute a product from Extralis called Presidium, or Fast Trace 2. This is one of only a couple of products that has been SCEC approved that can be used as the primary source of alarm. So the Extralis Presidium system has been proven to work when programmed correctly, and hence can be used as a way of generating an alarm in a high security environment. Certainly all of our Interlogics and Verint DVRs and NVRs have VMD, and as I said, we also sell the Extralis Presidium. There are other types of products available, such as electric fence and taut wire. I'll try and run through these very quickly. Taut wire systems are based on an intruder either cutting or climbing a fence, which is made up of a load of single strand wires. Each of these wires is typically connected to a sensor, and that senses a disturbance in the cable. The electric fences are no different to electric fences out in the country that have isolators, cable, and a processor. Or both these systems operate differently. To the naked eye, both of them look very much the same. So on the picture on the right there shows a couple of supports and a bunch of wires. In this particular case, it's a taut wire system. It could just as easily be an electric fence in this case. As I've said though, well, I've got down here, down the bottom, is both of these are typically fence systems. They really do need to be installed by a fencing contractor in order to maintain a degree of reliability. Taut wire though is extremely expensive, so the only place you'll normally find these are in prisons. In my opinion, this system doesn't have any redeeming properties when compared to other types of technologies. It's very difficult to install and it's extremely costly to maintain. An electric fence though, on the other hand, the unique thing about this is there's a level of deterrent. So, excuse my pun, nothing else is as shocking. Yeah. So where a deterrent is a key concern, an electric fence absolutely could be a product that would do that for your customer. In saying that though, it's the only product that we've spoken about today that has got strict Australian standards regarding installation and maintenance. And before you go and install it, I would check whatever legal implications there are before installing this on a customer site. In summary, we spoke about PE beams And the single units are okay for low risk, and the stack ones are good for higher security. The outdoor detectors, PIRs are pretty good on most sites, and you'll only find microwaves on the high security sites, mainly due to the cost. Buried detection is good, but ground considerations are very important to consider, and it's got an extremely high price. Microphonic systems are pretty much excellent. If you've got a fence, a microphonic cable system is a good solution. If you have a wall, a seismic or vibration detection is a great solution. And with CCTV, rarely used alone. Typically it's used with one of these other types of technology, and it's pretty much always for on-site monitoring. And the other products that we discussed, taut wire, is really only good for high security. An electric fence can be very good as a deterrent factor. It's the only one that can hurt, I suppose, someone that attempts to climb over or go through what you're trying to protect. If you'd like more information, please visit our website, and there you can also subscribe to the Alarm Corp Pulse to gain additional information that's regularly emailed out. You can also register online and gain access to our pricing and our online ordering. Or you can happily contact any of the people there in regards to your requirements for the various states, or of course happily contact myself. Alarm Corp has hit 2000 and what year are we now? 14 in a big way. We're now on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. I would highly suggest that the next time you're on any of these sites, just do a quick search for Alarm Corp and either follow or like us. We've got a broad selection of information. It's different to the information that we email out, and it's different to our webinar content. So it covers a broad range of topics. I like to think it's quite topical, so please, when you're next online, please have a look at our feeds. We'll be holding a number of regular webinars for the remainder of the year. Typically every third Thursday, we've got an intrusion webinar. So the next one is on the 15th of May, the new approach to the humble PIR. That will actually go into a little bit more detail than we typically do on how the technology in a PIR works. And then every second Wednesday, we have a CCTV webinar. Certainly if you want to register for any future webinar or to view any previous webinar, just go to the website, click on resources and webinars, and you'll see those all there. When you attend one of our webinars, you have access to special promotions. So for all purchases made online through our e-commerce platform, you can enter the code that's displayed there in checkout under the promo code, and you'll get an extra 10% off whatever prices that you already had set up in our system. This applies to everything other than the couple of line items that are listed at the bottom there. So please take a note of that promo code. If you have any questions, now's the time to write them in if you haven't already. And I will attempt to answer those now. Okay. First question. You spoke about coded PE beams. Can normal PE beams cause interference between other units? Yeah, they're not that much different to the way that microwaves work. And if you've got multiple PE beams in the same area, yes, they can absolutely potentially cause issues. So it's important to check the instructions that come with the beams to look at how they should be installed. And typically, the way that you would do it is you would need to set up the transmitters and receivers in such a way that the transmitter from one unit doesn't interfere with the receiver of the other units. And the way that you would do that is by having the transmitters located together and facing in different directions, or the receivers located together using the same method. Got here, what could be used on a warehouse wall to protect against ram raiding? There's, I suppose, 3 options that you could use that I would be happy with in all cases. One is you could use seismics along the wall. Any attempt to ram raid or knock down that wall would generate an alarm. You potentially could use vibration sensors as well, though that would probably be my least preferred. Or certainly you could use microphonic cable. If you put microphonic cable in a conduit and run that along the wall, you could, in this case, you could run it either on the inside of the wall, or if for whatever reason you can't, you could happily run it on the outside of the wall, and it would detect any degree of someone trying to break down that wall. One more's just come in. How long could a zone be when you're running it on microphonic cable? I suppose in some ways that's sort of how long is a piece of string. Different manufacturers will have different rates. For the G-equipped defensive system, it is possible, not recommended, but it is possible that you could run up to 300 meters of cable on the one zone. If you've got one relatively straight length of fence and you only want to have one zone, I would say that you could get away with it. Typically, those zones are broken up into maybe 100 or 150 meter lengths, 200 meters at most. But it is possible, both technically and operational possible, that you could have up to 300 meters of cable on one zone on a system. If there's any more questions, please ask them now. Okay, don't appear to be. So on that note, certainly appreciate the time that you've taken to attend the webinar, and certainly the time that it's taken out of your schedule. And I hope that you found it beneficial today. We certainly look forward to seeing you at the next one. And please have a very safe and happy long weekend. And if you're driving, please take special care. Enjoy the remainder of your day, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.